Hello, fellow educators and Dr. Colson. My name is Monique, and today I'll be sharing with you data meeting number 5, in which myself and a team member from another team, shared feedback about our data process throughout the semester. So that's why I call it the switch. Because myself, a team member from Team 3, and Veronica, a team member from Team 1, worked together to provide valuable feedback for second grade math and for third grade literacy from two different districts. Team 1 is from Montgomery County. Well, the data they looked at was from Montgomery County. And my Team 3, looked at Victoria's data from PG County. So, in order to give productive feedback, we felt it was important that we had all the information needed from each team. So, in order to help organize that, we created a Google Drive folder, one for my team's information and one for Veronica's team information. In that Google Drive folder, we placed the action plan, the data tracking, the action data action tracking sheet, and then the action plan tracker that we use from Venable's process. The only extra thing we added to help us really get a clear understanding prior to the meeting, so we could write down our questions and notices and suggestions on our peer rubric that Veronica and I created. We created a Google slide to help with that. And here's the Google slide that we created to help consolidate the information into one place. And as you can see, we even talked about here, presented how or when we could have our live feedback session, which actually wound up being on another day. And we'll get to that in a little bit. We actually had our live meeting on 7/31 at 10 a.m. instead of the Sunday time you saw in my Google Slide summary. Hold on a moment here. Now, our live meeting started off with, we looked at each of ours team process one at a time. So we started off with Veronica's team data. Now, we didn't just spend a lot of time going over the artifact tracking sheet or the action steps or reviewing videos because, again, we did that prior to the meeting. But what Veronica did do is give me a quick recap on what data was actually being used. And again, just like our team, they focused on one of the team members' data and looked at the artifacts from that and wrote lessons on that one team member's data. And so in this case, it was Karen's second grade data. Karen is a second grade teacher from Montgomery County. And in that county, they use a standardized test called MAP, which they tested a baseline in the fall. They tested again in the winter, and then finally in the spring. So the data that they looked at was the baseline data in the fall, and then the outcome data from the spring. Based on that data, they determined a exploratory question with small group instruction improved performance on MAP scores. Now, Veronica and I talked about this a lot, about how specific exploratory questions could be and what's the benefit of that. So one of the suggestions that I gave Veronica was that it might be helpful to actually write in the exploratory question how many students need to improve and what skill they would be focusing on. But one of the plus is that you could actually tell what data point they were using to explore and to examine throughout this process. So that, again, that's the MAP scores. And I provided my feedback here on the rubric. One thing I want to highlight here is that was helpful, that Veronica found helpful, was I explained to her that I went to the Makey Challenge for our Master of Education program offered on Friday. And at that challenge, one of the technology equipment that was shared with me was a Makey kit. And in that Makey kit, there was a lesson plan on Makey website for fourth graders solving word problems. And I thought that would be helpful, that she could modify the lesson and use the Makey kit. Let me just quickly show you that for Karen's second grade students. We wrapped up. We wrapped up our conversation by going over the feedback and answering any questions, and then we moved on to my team's data. So after we finished talking about Veronica's data, we looked at my team's data, which is based on Victoria's data. Again, just like they did, we focused on one team member's data and worked through that process with those students' data. So for my team, we looked at Victoria's third grade student data, which is based in PG County District slow baseline test scores, and we compared that to the end of the year scores. Our exploratory question we examined, I shared this with Veronica. What are the misconceptions of 35 students, 79.55%, not understanding the main idea of informational text, which is the standard RI 3.2. And again, we compared our exploratory question to Veronica's team exploratory question and talked about how details could actually help support all stakeholders during the data meeting process. So again, during the school year, this would include you as a teacher, and then the other teachers on your grade level team, and then possibly the resource teacher, administrators, and could possibly even be parents. So it would be helpful to actually make it clear in the expository question exactly what you're looking for. I just want to take a moment to quickly go over, highlight some of the things that Veronica shared in our feedback. One of the things that Veronica noticed was that it was helpful for how we, in our action plan, listed specifically what parts of the day we would try to implement the strategies that we talked about. So we'll put like whole group or small group, and then what teachers would be involved. Some lessons required resource teachers and speech therapists to actually come in and help with that lesson. One of the things that I noticed was a common best practice, even though I'm not a second grade or third grade teacher, I'm a pre-K teacher, but one of the best practices that Veronica pointed out for identifying main idea for second graders and third graders was to actually allow students to read articles that interest them, informational text that interest them, and actually cut the titles off and walk through the process of identifying the supporting details and then having them create a title. And that would help you as a teacher check for understanding and see how they're coming up with the main idea. And that's pretty much the best practice my team and I use when we created our lessons, except we incorporated it using technology as opposed to just printing out articles. So like we one of our lessons talked about like using the information infograph online where students could plug in their ideas, and we also identified some practice drill technology tools that could be used. And so I shared those with Veronica. But it was good to see that there are some best practices for teaching the main idea. So I'll definitely share some of the things Veronica, strategies Veronica shared with Victoria. So this process was a little different, but I do want to share what went well and things that we could potentially grow from if we conduct this process again, like in regards to our peer evaluation. What went well? Both myself and Veronica offer suggestions for improvement. We shared different teaching methods, specifically technology applications that could be used. And I noticed that a lot of the applications that my team and I use and that Veronica shared also had suggestions for other grade levels and was listed by standards. So it could be used for any grade level. We're well organized. And some areas we could stand and grow in. We're unfamiliar with each other, which we kind of tried to have some small talk and realize that we're actually interested. Both of us are interested in photography as a hobby. We had a schedule conflict, and different grade levels could be beneficial because you could also see what could work for older students and younger students to scaffold up or down.